Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. The Eightfold Path is sometimes simplified into three categories: Sila, Bhavana, and Panya. Sila is morality or ethics, basically keeping the precepts. Bhavana, the word means development, and it refers to practice of meditation. And Panya is wisdom, the unfolding of the understanding. It's the middle term, bhavana, I want to talk about in some generalities this evening. Meditation is an important part of the practice, but it's not the whole of the practice. It's an important component, but it's not sufficient on its own. Without a foundation in sila, then the meditation will never develop. So those three terms, sila, bhavana, panya, build on each other. They go in order. Bhavana, the very general term for mental cultivation, the principal part of which is meditation. Bhavana is developing the mind, and it could be compared to exercise for the body. Without exercise, the body becomes weak and flabby and unhealthy. Without developing the mind becomes confused and bewildered and dull, and there's a lot of suffering actually with the undeveloped mind. Mental formations can be a torment in the undeveloped mind. So meditation, as we generally understand and practice it, there's a paradox in that on the one hand, you could say it's a very artificial activity, but on the other hand, it's accessing a very natural state of mind. It's an artificial activity in that we deliberately simplify the externals. We find a quiet place, we sit still, close our eyes. Although there are certainly forms of meditation that don't close the eyes, but in general you're shutting off as much sensory input as you can to simplify your situation so that you can work on observing the mind. And there are many different particular meditations. There's the broad distinction between samatha and vipassana. And in both of those categories, there are many different ways of doing it. Just within the most orthodox text of the Theravada, the Suddhimagga, there's a list of 40 different meditations. And then they're extensively described. And that list is certainly not exhaustive. There are many other meditations that could be spoken of that do not come into that list. the idea of having such a wide array of meditations is because they all have some different flavor. They all have specific benefits besides any general benefits for the category as a whole. And because people are different, and the same person can be different at different times. But some meditations are more suited for some individuals. They can take very easily to some meditations and not to others. And some meditations are very useful for counteracting specific defilements. Sensual desire, for example, is counteracted by meditations on the body, such as meditations on the 32 parts of the body. And even stronger medicine is corpse meditation, as is described in the Satipatthana Sutta. It's very difficult nowadays to do it in the proper classical way. You need an actual corpse to watch it decompose, but you can do it imaginatively. And if you go through the stages as listed in the Satipatthana Sutta, they contemplate them imaginatively. It starts out very alarming and violent, even the bloated corpse, and then it's torn apart by dogs and crows. But then it becomes like a skeleton smeared with blood, then just bones, then bones bleached white by the sun, then bones crumbling to dust, and in the end the dust is blown away. So it actually ends up very peaceful, and it ends up in emptiness. Meditations on the Brahmaviharas are very good for counteracting the defilements in the category of dosa, ill will, anger, hatred, resentment. These are counteracted by metta. It's understandable, but it's sort of frustrating. Is over the years I've noticed that people who could really use and benefit from metta meditation, people that are full of ill will, they have a real resistance to doing it. They don't want to do it. People who really don't need it, the real natural loving kindness types, they love doing metta. It doesn't do them any harm, but they don't really need it. It's an illustration of the principle Ajahn Chah would talk about as going against the grain. Whatever your desire mind tells you, probably the best thing to do is the exact opposite. Anxiety and worry is best countered by mindfulness of breathing, which is intrinsically peaceful. And it's definitely one of the central pillars of the meditation practice in our tradition, mindfulness of breathing. And it's a particular practice that the Buddha recommended as good in all circumstances and good for all beings, and quite harmless. You can't really go wrong with mindfulness of breathing. And then in this Visuddhimagga list, there's a series of meditations that are called anusati, which could be, as has been translated often as contemplations. There's the three triple jewels, So there's Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, and Sanghanusati, contemplating the qualities of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And the traditional way of doing these is to use the qualities of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha as listed in the Itipiso chant. To go through the qualities one by one and contemplate them. So this is a kind of meditation. The Anusatis, they use the reflexive or thinking power of the mind. There's a Devanusati, which ever since I immersed myself in the cosmology, I find this meditation very pleasant to do and very brightening to the mind, clear away cobwebs and expand the mind and dispel darkness. That is, going through the various realms of devas and contemplating them, visualizing them. Another one, I think the last one in the list, I don't think I'm missing any, is contemplation of virtue, which is contemplating your own virtue, the merit you have made. Maybe it seems sort of self-aggrandizing, but it's very useful for us because in our culture we tend to be very self-critical. We tend to be very negative on ourselves, and we focus on our flaws and our sins. But if you think of contemplate your virtues and the merit you have made, this is a contemplation of virtue. Oh, there's also another one that's quite a different tack, is a contemplation of the repulsiveness of nutriment. To overcome greediness of food. Visuddhimagga goes through all the sort of disgusting aspects of food and eating. You know, that food looks delicious and tastes delicious, but as soon as sloppy mess in your mouth, then it comes out the other end, it's absolutely foul and no one wants to go near it. So there are kinds of meditations that actually use the thinking quality. But the purely samatha meditations, you're not using that, at least not in the same way, in the ordinary way. Up to first jhana, we do use vitakka vichara, which is the energy of thought, but it's directed. It's not contemplating or moving around, building pictures, but holding steady to an object. And the whole theme of the purely samatha meditations is to try and stabilize the mind in stillness. Careful here to understand this state properly. It's not pushing the mind onto the object, but it's opening the mind, making the mind passive and receptive, and allowing the object into the mind, and reducing the distractions by disregarding them, by non-attention, which is quite a special skill, the skill of non-attention. So this category of meditations begins with mindfulness of breathing, but there are many other things that could be taken as the object. In mindfulness of breathing itself, there often arises a point in the practice when what's called a nimitta arises. Nimitta just means a created thing, something created by the mind, an illusion. It's sometimes used in narrative texts to describe when the Buddha or another great being performs a supernatural feat. They can create nimittas, that they can create illusions that people see. But here, nimitta means an object created in your mind as you meditate, and classically it's something like a bright light or a disc or a star, this kind of thing. And if you are able to stabilize that and hold it and take that as the object, that can carry you all the way. But there's a problem here in that many people don't have success with that. And the nimitta arises and they're unable to stabilize it. So eventually they lose it and they go back to the breath until the nimitta arises again. And then they're back and forth for a long time. And they're not making any further progress. So if a nimitta arises while doing mindfulness of breathing, I think the best advice is to give it a try to see if you can stabilize it, because some people can and they can make good success, but many people cannot. And then if you decide, no, I can't stabilize it, then it's better to just stay with the physical sensation of breathing and ignore the nimitta, treat it as another distraction and disregard it. Other objects that can be used besides the breath are the kasinas. And some people have very good success with kasina meditation. A kasina is a visual object. And there's a list of 10 kasinas. There are elemental kasinas, like the earth kasina, where you fill a bowl with clean, packed red earth. Or the water kasina, a bowl full of water. Fire kasina, a flame. And here I would caution, it doesn't mean like a candle flame. Candle flame is not a very good suitable object for meditation. The way it's described in the Visuddhimagga, remembering that it was written in a period of pretty primitive technology, if you want to do fire kasina meditation, you need to have an assistant. So they say, have your novice throwing sticks in. You build a brick screen so that you don't see the fuel, you just see the flame. And you have the novice keep feeding sticks in so you have a flame to meditate on. Well, I suppose you could rig something up nowadays with gas. And the other kasinas are colored discs, various different colors, white, yellow, green, red, strong, sharp, primary sort of colors. The idea of a kasina meditation is using the visual sense, as the breath meditation uses the tactile or touch sense. You use the visual sense to have an object to focus on. And the initial disc or earth kasina or whatever it is an actual physical object that you've made and you set up and you're contemplating it. But that's only the initial preliminary practice. You want to get to the point where you can visualize it in your mind without a physical object. And then you can dispense with the physical object. And again, some people have great success with this and some people don't. I've tried doing kasina meditation. I'm got to say I'm absolutely useless at it. I can't do it. But some people I have met who have good success with it. And outside the Visuddhimagga lists, another meditation that Lungpor Samedo has been teaching for years, and many of the monks in our tradition use it, is meditation on what's called the nada sound. There's a sound that you can find with the mind that's always present, a kind of humming sound. And you can use that as an object of meditation. And depending on your taste, you can rely on different explanations for the sound. Some people like to take a very mundane explanation and say it's like some sort of physical, biological phenomena of blood in the eardrums or something. And people with a more romantic and speculative kind of mind say it's the cosmic sound, the sound of silence, the endless humming of the universe. But in any case, there is that sound. You can find it, and use it as an object of meditation. If you're unable to find it, one way is to first find it within white noise, like that waterfall we're hearing now. Or if you're running a shower at home, there's some kind of white noise, you can find the humming within that. And then when the white noise is gone, you can still find the humming. The use of mantras is something that's not very developed within Theravada, but there is an exception to that. Very common in the Thai forest tradition is the very simple two-syllable mantra Buddho. And a lot of monks use that. You use it Bu on the in-breath, Do on the out-breath. You use it to synchronize with the breath. So it's a variation of mindfulness of breathing with a mantra. Some other traditions, particularly Tibetan tradition, they use mantras a lot. And it becomes the object of contemplation. You repeat a few syllables over and over and over and over again. And meditation can be done either walking or sitting or standing or lying down. These are the 4 classic postures. We usually think of meditation primarily of sitting, walking as a secondary. But walking meditation is actually very powerful. Something recommended highly by the Buddha said that concentration built up while walking lasts a long time. And as a consequence of that, I find that if you've got time to do both, the best combination is to start with the walk and then sit down. And if you make the transition from walking to sitting very smooth and mindful, you carry that concentration into the sit. Your sit will be that much more powerful. So walking meditation is a very good preliminary exercise before sitting. And any meditation can be done walking. It's just that it's not a special meditation in and of itself. It's a meditation in a different posture. That said, there is one meditation that goes with walking specifically that is found in the commentary to the Satipatthana Sutta that many people have found to have a lot of benefit, is the 4-element walk. Meditation on the 4 elements. So as you lift your foot from the floor, that's fire, that's the energetic power. Then you move it through space forward, that's air, which is the motion. And then sinking down is water flowing down, and then earth is the last, is pressing your foot into the floor. So you're going through the 4 elements from the most energetic to the most stable. Fire, air, water, earth. Amongst other things, that has a benefit of keeping the monkey mind busy. You have to put some thought into keeping the terms straight as you do your walk, so you can't be using your mind to daydream and fantasize and philosophize. You got to stay focused on what you're doing. So all these meditations I've spoken of so far fall under the broad heading of samatha. And then we have the purely samatha meditations, and we have the more contemplative ones like the anusatis. And when we're doing a purely samatha exercise like mindfulness of breathing, we should think of what we're doing as purifying and simplifying the mind. A lot of people who have some exposure to the teachings, they hear and they read about jhanas and things, and they they get very goal-oriented, and they think of jhanas as some kind of special state to be attained, and it's like a prize. You get the bronze, silver, and gold, and I guess platinum. The different jhanas, but really they're natural states of mind. But what you're actually doing with developing samadhi is, by purifying and simplifying the mental process, you are trying to experience a transition or phase shift of consciousness. And consciousness exists in different levels. And the Abhidhamma gives 4 planes or levels of consciousness, beginning with the sense desire plane, which is our ordinary default as human beings. And then more refined and subtle than that is the realm of form, the Rupa Bhumi, which corresponds to the jhanas. Then there's the Arupa Bhumi, which is the formless states. And the 4th is Nibbana, the unconditioned, which is outside the whole realm of the others altogether. But as you transition from sense desire plane to plane of form, you're not actually adding anything to the mind. This is quite important to understand. It's not like something new you have to find and discover. It's there all along. It's a natural state of mind, but it's hidden, it's obscured by the clamorous noise of all the complications of the sense desire plane. It's a very noisy place, the sense desire realm. There's a lot going on. There's a lot demanding your attention. And as long as you are relating to that plane, you can't make that transition. That's why the teaching about the 5 hindrances is so important, to understand the presence of the 5 hindrances. They're the only things that keep the mind from settling into that more simple, more sublime, natural state, that more pure state of the jhanas. The other whole family of meditation, broad category, is Vipassana. And here the first thing that's important to understand is what we mean by Vipassana. Vipassana is not a particular practice or method. It's a state of mind. It's a way of holding the mind that's clear seeing. It's a non-reactive, equanimous, clear, sharp, precise, awake mind. Chitta is right on, unobstructed. And to get to that state, we have the particular methods and techniques that, particularly coming from Burma, of the Buddhist countries, Burma has been the most prolific in inventing and developing techniques of Vipassana. But here too, what we're doing is basically simplifying the mind. We're trying to get to the point where we're not doing anything. We're just being. It's actually the highest meditation, the most perfect meditation, is doing nothing. But that's extremely difficult. It's extraordinarily difficult to do nothing. So we try and get as close to that as we can with very simple exercises like watch your breath go in and out. There's next to nothing. I always remember that story about Milarepa, the great Tibetan cotton-clad yogi who was out and about one day, and he saw some people, village people, building a house. And he watched them for a little bit, and then he thought there was like a little rise of ground nearby, and he said this would be a good place to do some lying down meditation. So he lied down on the ground, and then one of the workmen said, "Look at that lazy yogi up there. Next thing you know, he'll come down here and be begging for his grub. Why don't you come down and give us a hand?" And the rapist says, "Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to help you, but I'm far too busy doing nothing. It's taking everything I've got." Another story, one kind of related, I guess. Back in the day when Kema was the teacher here, I did a retreat in a cabin down the road that's almost on the river. And it belonged to Kema's son, Michael. And Michael and his wife, Melanie, had gone on holidays, and he told me I could use the cabin for a retreat. So I was in there meditating. I guess I was sitting close to the window. There was a family living up the road that we knew. They came down cross-country skiing on the frozen river. And I could hear their voices. And I heard them say, "Who's up in there? I thought Michael was on holiday." "Oh yeah, I can see him. It's that other Michael." "What's he doing?" "Looks like he's meditating." And then the old man says, "Well, guess it beats working for a living." And at first I felt a little bit of anger, but then I thought, no, you know what? He's right. So really, the moral of this is that when you are meditating, try to keep it simple and try and think in terms of simplifying the mind, purifying the mind, getting past, cutting through, transcending the complications and the twists and turns, and trying to find a simpler state of mind. You could think of the jhanas, for example, as being innate primordial states of mind. And there's a basis for this in the mythological origins of the human species as Abhisara beings, second jhana level Brahmas that fell to earth by becoming entangled in sense objects, by tasting the foam on the sea. So mythologically, when we enter jhana, we're basically remembering something that was our natural state long, long ago, before we took on all these complications. And it's the same with progress in the Vipassana path. We're trying to simplify the mind, to get down to the rudiments of consciousness, of what's actually occurring on a momentary level, stripped of all the theory and stripped of all the metaphysics and all the analytics, just present with what's here at this moment right now. Let the mind experience the object. In the Thai forest tradition, they often talk about this process in terms of centering the mind on the citta, the pure knowing. And Ajahn Mahabua and his lineage, they're very big on talking in this way about just being with the citta, the knowing, the process of pure knowing. Interestingly, that's extremely close to the way the Tibetan Dzogchen talks about the process. Whereas the Burmese tradition, the emphasis is always on the object. In the Thai tradition, it's on the subject. But if either one is done perfectly, it becomes the same as the other. if you're centered in the knowing, then all the objects are crystal clear. And if you're clearly aware of the objects, that means you're naturally centered in the knowing. So you unravel the process by this very direct, very simple process of just being and knowing, which is the same thing. So I'll leave it there.
Handa mayam dhamma kataya sadhukaram dadamase sadhu sadhu sadhu.